our designs at ZenMaid are what I get complimented on probably the most out of anything that we do. And that's something that just it blows my mind because not only am I not good with design, I'm colorblind and just don't care for these details. And so it blows my mind every time I look at our software or our website or all these things that it's like, this like like my baby is like so beautiful, it's quite funny, so thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Anytime. It's gonna get even better.
All right, I think this thing's on. All right, hello, welcome my fellow Americans. It is I, Amar, your valiant leader. I don't know where I'm going with this intro. All right, today, guys, we have Jim, who is my designer at ZenMaid, who we have worked with. That Jim has an amazing agency, Love at First Try, that, has been working with ZenMaid for a couple of years now. Jim is one of my favorite people to sit down and to have conversations with at ZenMaid, because I feel like every time we sit down and we have a chat, we're essentially looking into the future of ZenMaid, and that's something that's just really cool. That, lots of other important conversations going on and everything, but I just find that the design calls are something that I really look forward to in a way that I didn't before. So, Jim, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for the kind words. It's like the creative call. It's like that's the nice thing with design. It's like it's a call that includes like a lot of imagination, like looking into the future and so on. So that's a beauty of design as well, in general.
And it's quite a bit of both high level, like really zoomed out strategy, and then also like really like into kind of like the details. And I realized that in my role as CEO, that's that's exactly where I sit these days. Is I'm either way zoomed out or I'm looking at the final details. And so the design calls, I think, just bring out the best in both for those. So, all right. I warned you about this right before we kicked off like the recording, but the first question to kick us off here, because like I know we're going to talk about quite a few things that make our working relationship quite effective at ZenMaid, and all the things that we do well that I think that a lot of my SaaS friends who are never going to hear this conversation could really like learn from. But what I'd actually wanted to start with is, what's your least favorite thing about working, or like what are the things that you hate about working with either like me or with like ZenMaid? Like, what are the negatives of working with us? What doesn't work, or what like breaks your process?
Okay. I like the way you phrase it. The honest answer is like there is nothing that is really bothering me to make it really annoying. And that's not a diplomatic answer. Me trying to kind of be political correct or anything. It's more like improvements, which is, by the way, something that I really like, that I saw Alex taking the leadership there and really standing up on the development process, like the reviews. That's an interesting one, like the weekly demos that Alex started coordinating with the dev team, and that I'm going to start participating as well, where I can get an overview of what's going on and so on, and how I can and find ways to have a bigger impact. This was the only thing at ZenMaid that sometimes were frustrating. It's like, the team is getting bigger, but then you have like many things, and there's some weeks where Slack gets really crazy. I'm like, man, I had this stream for this week that I'm going to do this design. Nope, it's not going to happen. I have like so many messages to catch up. And the thing is, like, it's not just about reading a message. It's also the actions you need to take in order to really finish the conversation there, which many times involves a redesign or like some design tweaks on something. Coming up with a process where I know that my Mondays now are the only days where I review these, I provide feedback, and then I can protect the rest of the days without sacrificing the progress of the dev team, has been one of the main pains that I had in the past, and something that I love seeing being improved. And the other part is the road mapping that we've been discussing. Road mapping is a very interesting thing, because I was a believer that you need to look into the future and have a roadmap for the year, which it's something that nowadays I find really silly and bad as an idea. Like, I could only make a roadmap for the next month or the next 2 months. And I really like what Basecamp said there, that it's really about trying to be in control of something you cannot control. That's why people love roadmaps, because they have this fake kind of a feeling that they can control the future. That's why I wanted it in the end, from what I realized. And the other thing is that you don't allow yourself to learn and pivot. It's like, how you assume that you're going to have the same knowledge in 4 months from now and the same plan will apply, but that's not true. So I really like that we started doing road mapping ZenMaid, but in the right way, something that we did yesterday in the design call, where Alex just brought a checklist and was like, okay, Jim, what's on your list? And like, what do we want to do? And how do we see like the next month? So it's short-term road mapping where the goal is really just to bring everybody together on thinking about the right priorities and the right goals for that month or that quarter. So that's been the other thing that sometimes I was feeling too kind of isolated into design projects, and I couldn't see the bigger image actually. So yeah, and I really like one thing. I mean, you asked for things that I don't like, but this came up that which is on the part that I like. The thing that you started saying, the we let me see if I remember correctly. Our mission is to, what was the thing, like to empower clinic business owners, something like that, and our goal is
Make
to
making maid
make it.
service owners successful.
Exactly. And then the goal is to reach the 3 million annual recurring revenue or something like that. So that was a really nice one where you really kind of set the vibe and be like, hey, here's why we exist and here's what the current high level business focus is right now. So these kind of things of having like the high level leadership direction to the roadmap of the dev team to understand the priorities has been a thing that wasn't there and was sometimes annoying, and now it's there and I can really feel the difference and it feels way better. So yeah, that's my long answer.
I definitely knew that you were gonna say planning. I knew that planning. I think that's something that stresses out most people on the team, and that's something I know it's gonna have to come from the top at some point. That there's only so much planning that you guys can do without me, like just changing my mind on things every other day. So we'll see when planning becomes a bigger part of ZenMaid. My executive coach is helping me with that a little bit. So okay, cool. So yeah, that's interesting. Like I'm glad to hear that the work that's already being done is addressing some of the things that have been like frustrations and everything. And I do think that's something that ZenMaid does quite well. As you've seen, that we're always open to feedback, we're always open to improving on stuff. Yeah, like how would you say that working with us has changed over the past like couple of years?
You mean like the changes that I've experienced like as a team, like how we
Just
evolved as a team
whatever
in a way?
comes to mind. I mean, yeah, whatever the question kind of means to you.
I mean, in the context of design, if I think about myself, the 80/20 thing is something that I'm going to be always grateful to Amar for teaching me this. It's like it's one of I didn't know about it like in the past. And it's something that I learned actually when we started working together. And now I'm making it even a core part of the secret sauce of how we design and so on, which is really
Just
the,
just quickly there, just for any listeners that either didn't catch that or don't know what it is. So 80/20
yeah, good
is
point.
just it's a concept that was made really popular by the 4-hour work week, but of course it existed long before that. And that's also called the Pareto principle, and essentially is just that as a general rule of thumb, 80% of your outputs will come from 20% of your inputs. So the example that I always give for this, I think that we talked about this on the last podcast episode with Stephanie, actually, is that most people will wear 20% of their wardrobe and the clothes that they own 80% of the time, and the
That's
remaining
so true.
80% of the wardrobe is generally for more like one-off occasions. It doesn't always mean that 80% of it is wasted. It's just you might have a really nice suit that you only wear for weddings, so you pull it out once, like twice a year, for example, and then you have a pair of pants that you wear literally every single day when you get home from work, for example. And so that's like the distribution, but that holds true in companies with like team members, with marketing channels, with a ton of different things. And some people will even argue that the ratio is even higher than that of 90/10 or 99/1. But yeah, that's something that I really hammered home when we first started working together on the design side. Was, I think, yeah, my if memory serves, that the tendency when we first started working together was to try to design like the perfect kind of like
Exactly.
more, yeah, like, yeah, the best possible solution every time. And well, yeah, I'll let you describe from there.
Actually, it's exactly what you said. It's like trying to perfect it. And the 80/20, like the thing in design is the following. In the code base, you know you will have some technical bugs. And you can say that, yeah, this is a rare bug, I don't really care. Like there's no bug-free code. When it comes to design, we always call them kind of improvements and so on. And it's like in design, it's not that you have some bugs and that you can ignore and so on. There is this tendency that I see that this is confusing, I want to fix it. But if you think about it as a low priority bug, then it kind of changes. And like that's where the 80-20 principle really helped me to not think about all the edge case, because for some reason, I feel like that's how designers are taught, but I don't want to generalize there. At least that was my thinking personally, of trying to make like the robust design that is not going to break. But then you told me, hey, Jim, like these edge cases, we don't care. If people end up doing these weird things in the software and break the software, fine, we can live with that. We're not trying to do the perfect thing. We care about the 80-90% of the customers, which is like, yeah, how most of the people use the software. And the 80-20 was one of the biggest things that I experienced as a transformation of the way that we work since we started working together. Let me think. I mean, that was not it's a transformation on my end, like a belief that you helped me get rid of, that the easiest path for the user is always the best path. That's like how a UX designer most of the times thinks. But once you start thinking as a strategist and then more of a conversion rate optimization designer and more what I like to say as a business person, that is think about what's the impact of this UX flow. For example, sign up, the account setup flow that we have in ZenMaid is about bringing new potential customers. And then you have, for example, the support resources you need to manage and everything. And I remember with the credit card step that I was like, why do they have the credit card step in this flow? It doesn't make sense. We should remove it. Let's make it easy for the user. But then you explained me the whole concept with friction, and that intentional friction can be good because it's a filter for people. It's like the saying of when people pay money, they pay attention. It's kind of a similar thing. Paying money includes friction. That's why they pay attention. In our case, it's about trusting and putting the credit card and not really paying money to start the trial. So that was a big mindset shift that happened since I started working with ZenMaid, and something that I keep in mind a lot when I think about UX improvements. And from a design process and development process point of view, another transformation that we managed to do that was really impactful was the workshops. So the story there was with the invoicing redesign project, we fell into the dark hole of exploring the scope, improving many areas, using only the design calls, which was only one call per week to review stuff, when we realized like in the end that we need more calls. So the result was that this project took way too long. And then we're at a point where like, okay, how can we actually fix that and not repeat this mistake? And that's where the hackathons idea came, and the hackathon/workshops idea came into play. And for me, it's been a big transformation because, yeah, we just moved way faster. And the key learning there was that
Can you just clarify what those are? Like what?
Yeah, that's a good point. So essentially, it's a call where the two of us, we co-design, but it's not that we design in Figma. Actually, let's say we want to build the invoicing. Instead of starting the project, explaining the high-level scope, and then Jim goes and starts designing a Figma, we do a series of back-to-back workshops where the whole idea is to scope out what these things should do. What is the MVP? We use the Moscow framework, where like Moscow is, you write down all the things that this thing could do, like this feature, the new invoicing system, and then you categorize them into must have, should have, could have, and not have, if I remember correctly.
Correct. Yeah, won't have, and that spells out Moscow, but without the vowels.
Exactly.
CW. It's a useful framework for lots of decision making. Yeah, for anyone that hasn't heard of that.
Exactly. And starting with realizing that the scoping of a feature, where you do a bit of wireframing, coming up with the specs, mapping out the high-level user flows, is a phase of the project on its own that requires way more collaboration between the designer and the business like the product business person, which is you in this case, was the big learning. And that's where we do these workshops where we come together and we make wireframes in Figma, we write notes in documents and so on. So by workshop, what we mean is that it's not a call to review stuff, it's a call to do stuff. And that's a bigger topic of people say we hate calls. I'm like, probably you don't know how to do calls. Like calls are fine as long as you collaborate and you don't just present and report and all these boring things. So that's been a big transformation of how we see calls. We don't perceive them as like time where we review stuff, but actually the time where we make progress and take decisions. And calling them workshops sets the vibe in a better way also.
Yeah, and that's where I think that like the naming conventions of these things are actually quite important. But just on that, I feel like we've tried so many different ways over time to kind of work through building new features. And I feel like we finally found something that really works quite nicely, where it feels like recently we've really been hitting it out of the park with the releases that we've been doing and kind of with the process and not missing with things that we've been releasing. And so, yes, in the past, I've had times where I essentially said, we need to solve this problem. And the team just went out and tried to solve that problem. And oftentimes that didn't go well because I wasn't verbalizing well enough at the beginning how well that went, right? Then we'd have check-ins earlier on, and very quickly we realized that without more definition at the beginning, that, you know, things were going to kind of like go awry, right? And so then I began to work on giving more definition to people, but then wasn't checking in as much later on in the process. And so over time, we've just sort of like figured out like different things. And now I think we've come to a really good sort of balance where I'm very involved at the beginning of the process so that you have a massive amount of like clarity and all of your questions are answered about what we actually need. But that's very different than actually designing the solution. And so then, you know, like we oftentimes, once we're into it, are canceling these calls so that you can just focus on the actual design. And then it's getting back together at appropriate times where you have blockers, and then at the end of the process to check in before it gets passed on to the dev team. And so I think that we found a really nice rhythm here that like I said, I feel like we're consistently, you know, making good contact, essentially, to keep the baseball analogy, right? It's just making good contact with the pitches, and just like everything that we're releasing right now is taking important steps towards solving real problems for our users. It's not always perfect, but like just that consistency, like the bar before you came in, I feel like there were more times that we would release things and just we'd miss something along the way where sometimes it wasn't valuable at all. And oftentimes we could go in and fix that with an iteration or two. But by that point, it's like you've kind of burned a little bit of like your reputation and like your goodwill. And people are like, what are these guys doing and all that stuff. And so, yeah, that's something that I think that is a credit to you and to our continued work to like find this process and to find what works for us personally, right? I think that that's actually another like important thing to note is just, I don't know that this would work for everyone else, but it works the way that you and I work. So yeah.
Exactly. It works on, it could work like in companies that are very similar, like they're fully remote, they're into synchronous work and so on. But yeah, I'm a big believer of the idea that, yeah, like every company is unique and you really need to figure out what works for you, your team, the skills of your team and so on. So yeah, workshops has been one of the the main transformations where I experienced a lot of positive impacts. Yeah, I think these are the main things.
Cool. Something else that I'd wanted to talk to you about, because it's something that I feel like we're moving this direction to have this focus. And it's something that I think that you probably have helped me realize was a big value and helped us to realize a lot more. And that's the company value or the company culture of fun and delight. That I feel we're really working on making all these individual moments and everything. For those of you guys not watching on YouTube right now, by the way, I've got Lola here in case you hear panting in my microphone. That's my that's my dog. She's decided to come up and join me here. Okay, sorry. So yeah, I'd wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, because I mean I feel all of these concepts sort of mixed together, where when we talk about fun and delight and all of the different ways that you and I have brainstormed and talked about, you know, there's so many opportunities inside the software, inside the product, inside the marketing funnel that we can add fun and delight and just create a better customer experience by just being a little bit more thoughtful in places that our competitors aren't. And it's interesting, like, yeah, I definitely want to talk to you about that, but I find it really interesting of how we're balancing those sorts of ideas with also that 80/20 and not like overwhelming ourselves with this massive endless to-do list. So
Mm.
yeah, I thought that that'd be a really interesting one to just like talk through, because that's another one that's working quite well for us, but I don't know that we've ever really discussed it too in depth.
True. Yeah, that's a topic that I'm super excited about actually. For this, what I wanted to say before that is also related to this, I'm a big process geek, but not in a way of like putting a lot of tools, connecting them, automations, like how people think about process and systems, but really the way that I see a process, and a process is also like when you bring somebody into the team, like when you do you do the design reviews? Should you do like after they finish the full implementation or before? Like it's really how the team works and not about the tools or the automations. Uh, I'm a big process geek because I had this realization that they say that when you're a business owner, you build you shouldn't be in the company but on the company. Like you build the engine and the engine makes the product. And it's pretty similar like with the process, where the first product you need to design is the process, and that product is going to generate the actual product, which is the end product that people are going to use. That's why I'm always thinking, can the process become better? Because many times it's not about improving the design, it's about improving the process that is going to make you, like empower you to do better designs. And now I'm getting into the delight part, where it was like a process tweak that I came up with and I felt pretty hyped about, is the following. Like I had this realization after working for 2 years together that projects compete with each other. Priorities always compete. And that's the nature of business. And delight is something I used to believe in the past that only companies with great design culture are focusing on delight. I realized I was like, that was wrong. It was team like, yeah, not really realizing how the world works. In order to do the delight stuff, you need to, I realized that the problem is that they're competing with new features and they're blocking the growth. So if you find a process where the delight doesn't block the growth of the company and can allow the company to keep delivering new features and so on, then like you, like as the CEO, will be happy to invest into that. You're not going to be now like adding that micro animation is not important at this point. People have been begging for these 2-3 features that can unlock new sales. And it's not that you don't have a great design culture or you don't care about the details. It's just that this process is going to lead to growth issues. So I realized it's my role there and my job to come up with a better process to fix it. And I've made this separation of two types of projects at a high level from a design point of view. You have the growth oriented, which is like new features usually, or major improvements on the UX, let's say, of the onboarding and so on. So you have the designs that are helping the company make progress and deliver more value. And then you have the delight type of projects where they're like, I wouldn't say like nice. I was about to say nice to haves, but I don't think they're nice to haves. It's more like design projects that the company can live without as well. The company's not gonna suffer, but if the company has it, it's gonna be super cool and they can increase the customer happiness. So we have two lanes of projects, and the way that we approach design now is that we have the main lane where we're having the growth related stuff that we do every week. And then in the design team, one thing to note here is that we also have Ioana and Mo. Ioana is a brand designer illustrator, and Mo is a motion designer, where Ioana and Mo, they're working on one deliverable per week that is related to product delight. An example could be for example, for the checklists, a new feature that we built in ZenMaid, cleaning checklist, where cleaning business owners can create a checklist of what their cleaners need to do on the appointment. We had this idea of let's give them successful templates, but the way we would present the software was just with a boring icon, like just with a gray icon. And we're like, these templates should feel exciting. Like we can add some delight, and we made 3D beautiful, 3D like beautiful illustrations of checklists with the logo of the clinic businesses that these checklists come from. And we also added some nice hover animations where like when you hover, like the checklists move a bit and so on. We released a feature. We didn't block the release for the illustration. We released with the boring icon, the adoption was super high. Everybody was happy. The company made progress, but the delight team, I call it, Ioana and Mo, and me as the leader, we added these illustrations in a later iteration and improved the delight. So the delight part, that's something that is also related to the evolution of how we work together, like an optimization that I'm very happy about, because now there is space for the fun stuff. And it was a process problem. It wasn't a resource problem. It wasn't a culture problem. It was purely process, how we do it. And on the delight, I'm not sure what was if you had a question, what was the initial question?
Just to riff on that a little bit. So one thing I think that's interesting is I think that delight, and one of the things that I feel like I've learned from you is that oftentimes, in my opinion, it's not that much more effort to be delightful. Sometimes it's not even any more effort at all. That sometimes it's just the mindset, right? You know, with the example that you just gave, it sounds like your team, first of all, I love that your team, that we released the feature, we saw the adoption, and then once we saw that the adoption was high, it was like, okay, now let's invest the resources to make it a little bit more delightful. I think that that's something that is really, really powerful, and is a really good way of going about doing this. But like what I was saying, that I feel like there are definitely other times where it's more just been asking the question at the very beginning of how do we make this delightful. We've sometimes ended up on things where sometimes it's just changing the text, right? Sometimes
exactly.
It's just, sometimes it's adding in confetti, when something happens. Like I wrote down a note here while you were talking that just, we obviously are putting in the effort to help our clients to get more tips for their cleaners. We think that's something that's going to be massively beneficial to ZenMaid's clients, and of course to the individual cleaners, and then of course to ZenMaid. But what I love is that you guys went just the tiniest amount above and beyond to add in the tip jar in the top right of of ZenMaid that goes up and makes it just a little bit gamified. But that's such a simple idea where,
right?
Yeah, just by thinking about that, it was just a different mindset that we're starting to bring to these things.
Yeah,
so
that's a really good point.
Yeah, I just feel part. Any of my friends, I feel could bring this more. Yeah, the last thing that I was going to say on that was just you can be delightful without it actually taking any more time. Lost my train of thought.
No, I think the point is clear there, that many people tend to see this as only when I become Apple or Airbnb and I have millions and an army of designers, I can do these things. But with 1-2 designers, you can do it. It's really a process and a mindset thing. Because the idea that you brought is on the header of the app, that we have this beautiful a gold icon where we show people how many tips they've collected, similar to how a game would work with the score. If you have more design resources, you can make that icon really beautiful 3D, and every time we receive a new tip, because we have Iana and Mo, this 3D icon is going to make a nice rotation, and you add this small delight. But even just putting the icon in there and finding one for free online and putting the tips is a way to delight people. So yeah, it's really what you said, is it doesn't have to be that complex in the end.
So one really important caveat here, and this is something that I believe that you and I have talked about when I think we were talking about some of the delight things, that so where people can get into trouble with this is that if your software has obvious bugs or missing features and you work on delightful stuff, your customers will get annoyed, right?
Yeah.
But something that I realized where you can almost not necessarily get away with this, but what I realized is that what is actually important there is the perceived effort, right? So when you do a fancy animation and it looks like you're spending your money on fancy like graphic animators instead of fixing like core issues in your software, that is going to frustrate people if there are significant issues. It does change as the company gets bigger, but that's going to really frustrate people. Now, when you change the wording on things to make the wording just a little bit more pleasant and a little bit more, delightful and like, just surprising and like in a good way or whatever, that's the kind of thing no one can ever really like complain about, because that's something that the effort to write those words is the same as writing the boring words.
That's
right?
a good point.
Yeah. And so that's something that we realized, because we tried to do some cute things back in the day at the wrong times, presented in the wrong ways, and we got customer backlash. And so that's how we kind of avoid it now, and how we go about picking like what to do, right?
That's a really good point.
Yeah, that's why like not every idea that we have that could be delightful for like some or all users, that's why a lot of them get thrown into the for forever to do list kind of like thing, like maybe in the future at some point list.
And on just a quick example, the copy stuff, like I have it on the Delight roadmap to work on it in the next weeks, is the success state. So a success state is when people take an action and it's successful. They created an invoice, or in our case, they created an appointment. Right now, we say appointment created successfully. Good job. It gets the job done. It communicates what it needs to communicate. But why not add a celebrated vibe and come up with 4 different strings of text and just pick one randomly every time, so that it's not like too predictable. So like, you're awesome, good job, whatever. Like with ChatGPT nowadays, if you give it a bit of guidance, this is the tone of voice that we have, this the theme of our business, and so on, you can generate this microcopy like super easily. That's why one of the main use case for me of the AI as well in the design process, the copywriting. And yeah, it's a really good example of, if you just think of all the success states in your software and you refine the copy there, that's an 80-20 kind of a fix. You can apply in less than an hour. So yeah, that could be adopted by like every SaaS product out there. And I really like how you present it with a perceived effort. Actually, it fully makes sense on how to prioritize things and manage the customer reaction as well.
Exactly. I mean, it's not the same, but it's a similar concept that I've just been thinking about for completely separate reasons. But there's like perceived effort, and then there's perceived value, and then there's actual effort, and there's actual value. And there's a lot of gain to be found when you find those to be mismatching, right? Like when there's some like value that you can offer to your customers that's really high perceived value, but is really low effort, right? Or is really like really perceived high effort, but is actually low effort behind the scenes. That's how you can really, I mean, that's where a lot of successful marketing campaign ideas like come from. That's where, just lots of good things for the company can come from things like that. And then also like on the flip side, where there's a lot of features that we have to decline or say no to, it's because the perceived effort is really low, but the actual effort is really high, right?
Yeah, 100%.
All right, cool. So what's something that you appreciate or that you find is different or more effective about working with ZenMaid versus like some of your other clients, or just, for some like my SaaS friends, what would you recommend maybe that they do like differently?
Yeah. So for me, I've worked like with different type of companies: early stage, mid stage, VC funded, non-VC funded, old school, non-old school, and so on. And ZenMaid is in my top 3. And there are 2 things that I like, and I'll explain also why I like them, like why I feel this way. The first one is marketing. Like ZenMaid really knows how to do marketing, and that's on you. Like you did all the work all the last few years, and now with Run, it's going even better. And like the marketing team has been doing amazing progress and amazing job on this. And what I mean by marketing is, you have a very clear ICP, like you know who you're selling to. You've done you know how marketing works, and you did the hard stuff like the magazine, the ZenMaid Summit, like things that take years until they work, like all the SEO thing, the content. And I remember like there was a moment that really stayed with me when we did the new pricing plans recently, when we launched the new pricing. And I was like on a design call, Amar, I want to ask you something. If I was the CEO of ZenMaid, I would be freaking terrified about changing the price and everything. Maybe I will have to start firing people because I'm going to run out of money. I don't know, like only catastrophic scenarios would come into my head. It's also part of my personality sometimes when I don't know like a lot of stuff about something. And I remember like one thing that you said is that you trust the brand we've built, so that you trust it and you believe people are gonna stay there. And it was a really good reminder of the power of branding, of like being around for many years and producing a lot of free value and building this relationship. You're like, no, we're not just an early stage startup that decided to change the price and people are going to disappear. We have customers for years and we have built relationships and we have a brand authority in the market. So something that I really like about ZenMaid and makes me feel like empowered in a way and makes me believe more into the company is that the marketing foundation is really there and the company really understands the fundamentals of marketing and is putting everything into practice. So that's number one, because honestly, like if you don't have good marketing, it affects everything. Like you don't have enough leads, you cannot really see the impact. The excitement is not going to be the same because maybe adoption is going to be low. So it always creates issues if you don't have like proper positioning and proper quality on your traffic and quantity also of the traffic on your website. So that's the first thing that I really like about ZenMaid that not every SaaS company has. And actually many SaaS companies struggle with it. It's also like an interesting thing because with ZenMaid, it's not a tool that can be advertised in many ways. It's a software for cleaning business owners. So the fact that it's specialized by default makes it also easier in terms of the sales and so on. If it was just a scheduling software for many different industries, like competitors, for example, then it would be a different kind of story and would make everything more challenging. So yeah, I also like that it's so specialized. That's something that I really, really love because you can make more fun stuff. Like it's only for cleaners. So we can create beautiful illustrations and come up with the beautiful visuals around cleaning. And in general, that's something that is true in design as well. The more focused you're on something, the better you can make it. And when you specialize into serving one audience, you can create something very unique and sophisticated for that specific audience. That's something that I also like a lot. And the what was the third part? Give me a sec. Yeah, it's on the dev process. It's on how we build the product, where the company is pretty modern. And what I mean by that, I've worked with more old school companies that are not true tech companies in their core. And you can see this when usually the leadership comes from other industries. They're not tech people. Like you being a marketeer for most of your life, you were working to tech companies. So you really understand what building software means. Like many people get into the software industry to build a SaaS, but don't truly understand what it means to build software, like the whole concept of sprints, how like the complexity of the software, the whole thing of coming up with the process and keeping a steady rhythm, how to review work, what expectations to have, and so on. It requires a very specific mindset to think about software. And that's something that ZenMaid has. And I find it pretty cool as well that there are no old school elements in the culture of ZenMaid. It's pretty progressive as a company. And something that I learned, which is more on the cultural side, is that it's like the title of the book of Basecamp. It doesn't have to be crazy at work. And with that, I appreciate a lot the lifestyle driven kind of a leadership in a way where you're not like the freak CEO where everything is late, not from your side, but like for the team that you guys are always late and you need to move faster and keep pushing. But you create more of a culture of we're here for the long term. I don't want to make an exit and become a billionaire next year. I want this company to be fun. I want to make these retreats. I want to invest into the culture. So that's something, playing the long-term game and really owning the company and not defining your full self like through this thing and actually treating it as just one part of yourself as the owner and CEO is something that I really like because I can see the impact on the company that it's not a slow company. It's a fun company. With the process optimizations, we move pretty fast, but it's not that we're like, it's crazy when we have to do all the work or it's like full chaos and full pressure. So that's something that I really, really like as well.
Yeah.
It's something that I learned from as well, personally.
One of my favorite quotes was in the CrossFit gym in Bali. I'm pretty sure it's from the military of slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So it's just like slowing down to speed up. And
Uh,
that's kind of how I feel like for ZenMaid is I feel that we haven't rushed. We've taken our time with a lot of things, and while that looked like it was us moving slower, it allowed us to stay more consistent for the past 12 years. And now it's like we're starting like some of the stuff that we used to do slowly, we're now starting to do fast, but still at a really high level, like the design and everything. And so that's quite cool. I think it was funny what you were saying about the new pricing and how I was like confident in the brand and everything, because I wouldn't say that's why I was confident in the new pricing. Well, like it's rather I know that we did the work to make sure that the new pricing, like we knew where we were falling within the market
yeah,
and that it
for
wasn't
sure.
unreasonable. A big reason that we paid Jules the amount of money that we did was essentially to de-risk that and to make sure that it
Mm,
wasn't going to go like horribly wrong. But then the other thing is that, it's really just basic like worst case scenario planning, right? When you were asking, oh, what if like everyone leaves? We can always just revert the pricing. We can always just go back to what the pricing was, where people felt like they were getting a
yeah,
really good
true.
deal. And, when you really think it through, it's like the worst case scenario was maybe it wipes out, 10, 15, 20% of like ZenMaid's revenue. It's like that would be a real pain. Like, don't get me wrong, the same way, don't get me wrong, like I would like to be a billionaire next year. I probably wouldn't want to exit, but like just to be clear on that last comment that
Yeah.
you made, like I would take being a billionaire for sure. But yeah, no, I think it's really just like worst case scenario, like planning. I do think there were a lot of reasons for us to be confident in the actual pricing change, but it's another like concept from the 4-hour work week that I picked up where when you actually plan for the worst case scenario and you figure out what you would do in those
Mm.
situations, most situations are nowhere near as bad as people like make them out to be.
That's very, very true. Yeah, that was the other thing that you mentioned that I forgot. That was very kind of a like a stress. It got the stress out of me. The whole thing is like, yeah, we can just revert our decision.
Yeah.
Like it's not irreversible or something.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Because
yeah,
it's
it's a
it's
very
one
good
of those
point.
things that I think when people are thinking about something that they don't want to think about or an outcome that they don't want to imagine happening, they will tend to almost keep it really vague. That almost helps people, or they think it helps them to actually manage it. And what I've found is actually, if you get really specific about your fears, it's really easy to alleviate those fears, right? So like when it's like, oh, like, I'm concerned that the new ZenMaid pricing might completely take the company. It's like, okay, well, let's think through what would actually be required for that to happen. Like, first of all, would that mean 50% of people left? Like, if 50% of people stayed and paid us the pricing that we just changed to, then that means we've only lost maybe 20 or 30% of our revenue. So, like, is that the worst case scenario that we're talking about? Now, the worst case scenario doesn't sound that bad. It's like, oh, like if this goes terribly, right? Or whatever. And so actually
Yeah,
the
yeah.
more detailed that you think about it, the
Mm,
easier that it can be to actually go, oh, okay, like that's not realistic, or that is realistic, but we can do XYZ in that situation to potentially reverse it. And so this is just something that I do. I mean, it's a mental exercise that I do with almost everything of just, like because it's literally a mental exercise and it's like a muscle that I've worked up over time. It's by default when I'm on my way to the train station, I already know what my plan is if I miss my train for any reason. It doesn't usually
mm,
happen, but when it does, it's that much less stressful because I've just thought through of it's like, oh, I know the next one is in 15 minutes or is in 25 minutes without having to check or whatever, right? And it's like that's something that literally while looking up my initial train, I'll look up when the next one is just to make sure that I'm aware of it. So like with practice, it's literally zero additional effort. And so,
that's very true.
yeah,
And I
something
really,
as big as the pricing change, I definitely thought through a lot of those situations.
yeah. Yeah, planning for the worst case scenario, that's a really, really good one. Because it's like the whole thing with emotions and fear, it's very tricky that sometimes we are holding back like on some decisions because of fear. But if you get into the details, maybe you realize that, yeah, I'm just losing time. Like I could take that decision and there is an easy backup plan. It's not that it's gonna be a catastrophic one. So yeah, fully
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, exactly. Like for me, when I started doing the digital nomad thing in 2015,
Mm,
one of the things that made that easy and people said, "Oh, it's brave and blah blah blah," but I knew that I could move back in with my parents, right? And that's not a
exactly.
luxury that everyone has, right? Like that makes me very, very blessed, and I was very, very blessed like at the time. So I always had that as a fallback plan. So where other people saw me taking this big like life risk, to me it was like, the worst case scenario is that I take a flight home and live at my parents, and it's a little bit embarrassing, and then I've got to go find another job. That was the
Mm,
worst case scenario. It wasn't like, I was going to end
exactly.
up homeless in like the streets of, I don't know, pick
That's
a random country.
it's very cool that you bring this example because I have the exact same story on my side when I moved from Greece to the Netherlands, where I was like, you
Yeah.
know what, I want to explore a different ecosystem. Like I'm not a really good fit to the Greek culture. I wanna try the Netherlands because the vibe is there. Like I feel it could work, and there many people say, oh, that was like a bolder move. Like you must be like you have a lot of courage to actually move to a new country. I was like, I don't know, like it doesn't feel like that because what I said to myself back then is like, okay, I moved there. If this doesn't work, it's literally one ticket, 200 euros to go back. That's it. Like
Yeah.
it's exactly what you described. It's not because people think that it's you relocate, like you're tied to a new country, you cannot move, but then you realize, no, I'm a free human. Like the
Yeah.
only complex thing that I can think of is that you have a child that is going to school and they're a bit kind of, let's say at the age of 10, 12, and moving back would affect their life and their social connections. But even
Yeah.
there, sure, they're going to go through a tough phase, but still you can still move. So yeah, it's many times like stereotypes or just like how the brain works that you feel that it's like there is a lot of risk into something when actually there is zero risk in that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I had the exact same thing with the relocation.
Yeah,
Same story.
exactly. And it is quite interesting how for a lot of people the really brave things that they do in their life take a huge amount of courage and take a huge amount of bravery, but there's also things in life where to everyone on the outside it's like brave, it's courageous, it's all these things, and then to
Exactly.
the person doing it they're just like, I didn't have a choice. Like that was like the obvious thing to do. Like what else was I gonna do? And like to
Mhm.
them, it's just like that. This was like the only kind of thing, the only consideration that could have possibly like made sense. And to the rest of the world, it's just like wow, what a decision. So it is quite funny how
Exactly.
yeah, how perception works that way.
Yeah,
So
yeah, true.
cool. All right. Well, hey, let's wrap up here. I get the feeling that we'll do this again. I talked to the exec team actually on Monday about us starting essentially an internal podcast of doing something along the lines of this, but that's
That
more
sounds
about
fun.
sharing the process for like the rest of the team to get a better understanding of how you and I are working together on a weekly basis, and for me to do this with all of like the team members. But yeah, no, this is fun. This is one I wanted to bring you on. That like I was saying, there's a couple of my friends that are SaaS founders that are listening to this, and I know are quite curious about our design process. And honestly, like our designs at ZenMaid are what I get complimented on probably the most out of anything that we do. I mean, granted, people are
Really?
seeing like the product, but
Yeah,
yeah, like I always
that's
get
cool.
get comments about that from folks like outside the industry about how beautifully designed like everything is. And that's something that just blows my mind because not only am I not good with design, I'm colorblind and just like don't care for these details. And so it just blows my mind every time I look at like our software or our website or all these things, that it's like this life, like my baby is like so beautiful, like it's just it's quite funny. So thank you for that, I appreciate it.
Anytime, anytime. It's gonna get even better.
Yeah, for sure. That's the other crazy thing is like it feels like we've come such a long way and are like just like ramping up, really. Like it really feels like we're just getting started. I think in the next like couple of years it's going to be like more resources on the design side and on the dev side, and
Mm,
we're starting to really like pick up steam, design things quicker, like I said, just make better connections on all these opportunities that are coming our way. So yeah, I'm excited for
exactly.
what's next.
Yep. One thing I
Yep.
realized we forgot to talk about, and I cannot even understand why I forgot to mention. You asked me in the beginning of the podcast, of the episode, like the transformations. I didn't mention Steph, like adding Steph into the design goals. This had
Yeah.
been
Okay.
like one of the top five. But maybe, yeah, not sure if we want to elaborate or we can discuss on another call.
We got a
Yeah.
little bit of time. We got a
Okay.
few minutes. Yeah. So yeah, guys. So Steph is Stephanie Pipkin, who was actually on the last podcast episode that I published here. So she runs her own maid service, Serene Clean. Now that I think about it, I don't think I really introduced her. I think we just like jumped into it because like that's just like how we do things. So yeah. So Stephanie owns a company, Serene Clean. She started out starting her business and using ZenMaid from day one. That was 6 years ago, and she now has, I believe, it's a seven-figure like a cleaning business in the United States with, I believe, 30 cleaners approximately. And so she reached out to us to join, or essentially to do content for ZenMaid, which was an amazing opportunity for us. And she does our podcast, the Filthy Rich Cleaners podcast, which is a lot of fun to listen to, even if you're not a maid service owner. That's probably being generous, but just trust me, guys. Just go give it a listen, give it a 5-star review. This one too. Anyways, Stephanie joined us in the Netherlands last year for the ZenMaid team retreat, and at that time it became clear just like how much more involved she wanted to be and could be in ZenMaid. So that's what Jim was just talking about the value of having a actual ZenMaid customer. And Jim, you can talk about all the ways that she contributes to like your work.
Yep. So I've been a big fan of like user testing and getting feedback from users and so on. But the problem always is like, again, the process. It can take a lot of time. Sure, you can make surveys, send them to them, do asynchronous user testing, ask them to record themselves. You can do all kinds of things. But even just finding the right people, making sure they have time, waiting for the feedback and so on, it just takes a lot of time. And it's very kind of, the friction is really high. It's funny with Steph that it just came, like, I knew that I want to solve this problem personally. Like, I was like, I cannot find a solution, but I really need to. I'll just keep searching until we find one. And during the retreat, like, it's something that I never really asked for and I couldn't even think about at that point. You brought Stephanie. You're like, yeah, by the way, Stephanie's going to join us. She's a custom ZenMaid. And that's where I got to know her. And the vibe was really there. That's a very important thing to note, is that for sure, like, you want to listen from all your customers and you want to be inclusive and so on, but not every customer can give you really good feedback, because making somebody like at least feedback in like the type of feedback that we're looking for with Steph, because with Stephanie, what we actually did is that we started inviting her to our weekly design call where we review and scope out the new things to do. So it's a bit of, let's review what they made during last week, and also let's do some designs together and actually drive some progress and take some decisions we need to take all together as a team in the designs. We started bringing her in these calls, and now me as a designer, I have full access to the brain of a customer on a weekly basis. But what I was trying to say with the kind of customer that should be invited in these kind of calls, Stefan is really good, because he's a successful entrepreneur, on giving good feedback and not exploding the scope of every conversation. When I need to answer, like, we're doing the checklist, for example, and we explain here the whole concept that you have a place, you create all the checklists, and then you assign them to appointments. Is this okay, or do you need to have like checklist templates and then create instances and come up with a more robust solution? And then she can really show you the process that she's following and explain what would work and why something else wouldn't work, and really keep the conversation focused. So I've tried doing this with other customers, for example, with other teams, but it won't really work because, yeah, the feedback won't be that good. So you really need to find the right customer to do this. That's what I want to highlight, because many times there is this perception that every customer is a good customer. You should fully listen to the feedback, but that's not entirely true. And yeah, that's something that we actually started doing because of the retreat, because on the retreat, you invited Steph. We did these hackathons on the retreat where it was the first time that I actually was prototyping with the customer next to me. I was just me and Steph prototyping a new version of the booking forms. I was like, man, this is powerful. I can take decisions so freaking fast here and produce high quality designs in half amount of time, just because I have direct access to the knowledge that I need. Not side note, but a story to share on this is the invoicing project we mentioned before about the process optimizations. One of the biggest struggles there was that I was expecting you to tell me what the customers need. So I was like, hey, Amar, this is how I think deposits, the feature of deposits should work. Like, for people to pay a deposit before the appointment. And you try to guess if that's right or not. But you're trying to decide based on the knowledge you got from customers and so on, but you're not actively running a clinic business at that point at the level that Steph is doing it. And it's way easier for Steph to answer and tell you, here's the workflows that we have, and here's what we'll have to change in the company to make this deposit feature work, for example. And you can get way more clarity. So yeah, after the retreat, it kind of happened organically in the retreat. And that's, I think I was the one that brought the suggestion, like, hey guys, this works really well. We should bring Stephanie to our design calls. Is that or not? Kind of relationship we have with Stephanie. And yeah, since then, the rest is history. The efficiency of the design just kind of exploded. I would say it was like a major impact that it actually had. It wasn't a refinement. It was like a big improvement.
Big jump. It was step level. Stephanie had reached out after the retreat and had said that like the way that it was sort of like working, her brain was very different than what she got to do inside the maid service, and that she was really enjoying it. And so she was looking for that at the same time. I do think that there's a lot of value in finding the right person for this. That with Stephanie, she's both experienced in the industry and works with a lot of other like maid service owners and stuff. But I think that a really big thing is, so obviously she's got good high level understanding, and there's going to be some like business things, like business requirements that like are going to make somebody better or worse for being kind of this person for like for your business. But the biggest thing to me is that she finds it fun. Right. And that's like the thing, right, is that she looks forward to these calls. I mean, she's getting up sometimes at 5:30 in the morning to jump like on these calls because like we're in Europe, depending on daylight savings and like and et cetera. And she's there because she just enjoys it. She enjoys talking through these things. And like it's fun for me as well, right? That we're, like I said, we're looking at the future of ZenMaid. It's a nice tie-in to like the start of the conversation where it's like, we're looking into like the future of like ZenMaid, and we get to make very quick like decisions that then a couple of months down the road we actually see as a reality in like the product. And that's quite addictive, and so I think that makes a big difference as well. So
and that's a really good example of what we said before with the process. That is the product that makes the product, actually. Like we just added another stakeholder like in the design calls. That was we didn't introduce any new tool or any fancy automation or anything. It was just a person that we added that changed entirely like the confidence we have when we build new things, and also how fast we can move, because we can take decisions faster. So that was a really nice one as well.
All right, cool. We're going to wrap up there, guys. If you want to learn more about working with Jim, you can fuck off. He's mine. Stay away. No, you can learn more about his agency at loveatfirsttry.io. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, loveatfirsttry.io, and he's got some good content and stuff on Twitter. He is criminally underrated on Twitter. Doesn't get anywhere near enough engagement. That is Elon screwing us all. But anyways, moving on. Now this isn't going to get published. They're now going to limit the reach on this. So all right, cool. I'm gonna stop talking. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for jumping on. If you have any questions, drop a line to me on Twitter or email me or whatever. You guys know what to do. Thanks for joining, Jim.
Thank you. Thanks as well.